Here are the answers to Portfolio Questionnaire 1. So compare these answers to your own to see how you did. Question 1 is true false. Well, they're all true false except for the last one. The statement is equilibrium occurs in a market when the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. So if we draw a demand curve, and let's say the price is $5, and at that price consumers are willing and able to purchase 200 units of this product, and let's say we drew in a supply curve here, and at the price of $5, it turns out that suppliers, the sellers, are willing and able to offer 200 units for sale. In this case, the quantity demanded at $5 equals the quantity supplied at $5. So the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. There's no incentive on the part of either buyers or sellers to bid the price up or down at this point, in which case we would say that the market is in equilibrium. There is no tendency to change the price or quantity from this point. So that is true, that statement. Okay, the next one. A shortage of apples causes apple sellers to cut their prices. True or false? Alright, so let's construct a situation where there's a shortage of apples. So let's set the price of apples at $3 per apple. At that price, sellers are willing and able to offer only 100 apples in the marketplace. But at that price, buyers are willing and able to purchase 300 apples. So the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. That is, there's a shortage. So the statement is saying this will cause the sellers to cut their prices further. Well, that's obviously false. In the case of a shortage, what happens is that the buyers will start to bid the price upwards. And as a result of that, suppliers will start to increase the quantity supplied. They will move upwards along their supply curve because it is profitable for them to supply more to the market now. But buyers will decrease the quantity demanded. That is, they will shift upwards along their demand curve, because at the higher prices some consumers are not willing and able to purchase as many apples as before, and this will continue to occur until you get to the point where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. At that price, then there will be no further tendency for prices to rise. We will have achieved equilibrium. In any case, the point is that the sellers of apples won't decrease their prices, they'll increase them. The next one. If the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, this will cause the demand curve to shift to the left. Okay, so the quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. That's the same as the previous scenario where we had a shortage. So if there's a shortage, will this cause the demand curve to shift to the left? Well, the answer to that is no, it won't. And we know this because a shift in the demand curve is independent of the price of the good. If there's a shortage, then the price will change. The price will increase. But we're not talking about that kind of scenario. A shift in demand is independent of price. It's caused by non-price factors. So what are those factors which can cause the demand curve itself to shift either to the left or to the right? Well, one is the number of buyers in the marketplace. So, for example, if we're talking about a shift in the demand curve to the left, we call that a decrease in demand overall. So that would be a decrease in the number of buyers in the market. Income of buyers. If there's a decrease in buyers' incomes, then the demand curve will shift to the left. The prices of related goods. Now, the related goods here are substitute goods and complementary goods. If the price of substitutes decreases, then the demand for the product that we're interested in, that we're examining, will decrease. The demand curve will shift to the left. On the other hand, if we're talking about complementary goods, goods that go with the product that we're talking about here, then an increase in the price of a complementary good will cause a decrease in the demand for the product that we're talking about here. Expectations of buyers. If buyers expect prices, the price of the good we're talking about here, they expect the price of that good to fall in the near future, then they will decrease their demand now and wait for that lower price in the future. And the tastes of buyers. If buyers, for some reason or other, start to like this product less than they did before, then the demand will decrease. That is, the demand curve will shift to the left. If a consumer's income rises, they will buy less of an inferior good. Well, this is pretty simple because it's just a definition question. The definition of an inferior good is that a change in the quantity demanded is inversely related to a change in the buyer's income. So inversely related or negatively related here just means that the buyer's income and the quantity demanded move in opposite directions. So income goes up, quantity demanded goes down. Income goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Right? That's the definition of an inferior good. So this statement is true. Next one. If the supply of Coca-Cola increases due to technological innovation in production, the equilibrium price of Coca-Cola decreases. Right, so let's work it out. We've got a demand and supply curve here. So we're assuming that in the case of Coca-Cola, we could represent that market for Coca-Cola with a demand and supply curve. Now, in fact, that's probably not realistic, because demand and supply curve, this model presupposes that we're thinking about a competitive market, and no one would say that the cola industry in Australia, for example, is a competitive market. It's not. It's very heavily dominated by the Coca-Cola Corporation. Anyway, but let's say, all right, given that that's the case, let's just do a little back-of-the-envelope analysis and see what we get, just for fun. So we've got demand and supply here, and we're saying there's technological innovation, so we would represent technological innovation in production by shifting the supply curve to the right, increasing supply. Now let's get rid of the old supply curve. At the original price of $5, the quantity demanded is 200, but now the quantity supplied can be much higher thanks to this technological innovation. And so what do we have? At the price of $5, we've got oversupply. The quantity supplied would be 400, the quantity demanded is 200. In that case, the price would get bid downwards to eliminate this oversupply. Let's say it gets bid down all the way to $3, where the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied at 300. Okay? So, true or false for our statement? The equilibrium price of Coca-Cola decreases. True, it does. Now we've got questions 6 and 7 here, and we'll do them both together because we can do one graph to knock off two questions. The first one, or first statement is, if both the demand and supply curve for apples increases, then the price of apples will definitely rise. And the next one, it's the same thing. If the demand and supply of apples increases, then the equilibrium quantity of apples bought and sold will definitely rise. Alright, so what we want to look at is an increase in the demand and an increase in supply, and we'll see what happens to price and quantity. The statements say that both price and quantity rise. Alright, so let's increase demand by a lot. So we shift the demand curve to the right. And let's increase supply also, but by not as much. Alright, now we know what's going to happen is that price will now gravitate to the new equilibrium here, the intersection of the new demand and supply curves. So we can see in this case the equilibrium quantity has increased from 200 to 300. And we can also see that the price has increased from 5 to 6. So should we conclude that both of these statements are true? Well, no, not necessarily, because we've got this naughty word here, definitely. So no doubt about it, the price will rise. And no doubt about it, the quantity will rise. So let's test out a couple of other scenarios. Rather than having a really big increase in the quantity demanded, why not have an increase in demand that's equal to the increase in supply? What would happen then? So we're still increasing both demand and supply. The price and quantity will gravitate to the new equilibrium, which is here. Aha! So in this scenario, we've got an increase in the equilibrium quantity from 200 to 275. But what's happened to the price? Nothing. The equilibrium price has remained the same because the increase in the demand and increase in the supply curves are identical. One last scenario. What if we've got a relatively small increase in the demand curve, and what if we had a really large increase in the supply curve? So we pushed it very far to the right. Price and quantity will gravitate to the new equilibrium, the intersection of the new demand and supply curves, which is here. Now what's happened to the equilibrium quantity? It's gone from 200 to 375. But what's happened to the price? The equilibrium price has fallen from $5 to $3. So what can we conclude based on these three scenarios that we've examined? Well, in every case, the equilibrium quantity has definitely gone up. But what about price? Well, we found that we can construct a diagram where we've got an increase in demand and an increase in supply. But we can either have the price going up, the price not changing, or the price going down. So we can't say that the price of apples will definitely rise. It's indeterminate. It depends on how large the relative changes in the demand and supply curves are as to whether price will go up, go down, or remain unchanged. So for question 6, false. For 7, true. 8. In the diagram, if the economy is producing the combination X, 5 million DVDs and 2 million mobile phones, then there are either unemployed resources or there is an inefficient use of those resources, but not both. Well, you could interpret this as a slightly tricky question, because very often in textbooks and other presentations these are presented as kind of alternatives, but that's not really true. You could have a scenario where an economy does have unemployed resources, and the resources that it is employing them in a very inefficient manner. So it's entirely possible that you could have both of these things occurring at the same time. So, strictly speaking, this one is false. Number 9. In the diagram, if decision makers choose to shift from combination B to combination C, what is the size of opportunity cost of producing extra mobile phones? Alright, so we're going from B to C, which means we're able to produce 1 million extra mobile phones compared to before. But in order to do so, we had to give up 2 million DVDs. Remember, the opportunity cost of any decision is that which you had to forego, that which you had to give up. And in this diagram here, in this model here, we express what you gave up in terms of the physical quantities of things. You gave up 2 million DVDs. That's the opportunity cost of obtaining an extra 1 million mobile phones. Lucky last. In the diagram, give one way in which the production possibilities frontier could grow to reach combination Y that's currently beyond the production possibility frontier here. How could you get there? Well, there's 3 general things that could be done. One is to increase the quantity of resources. Now that would be a sufficient answer by itself. It's the bare minimum required. Increase the quantity of resources, but you could give some kind of, you could flesh it out a little bit more. Say, well, we've got, what resources have we got in our economy? We've got land and raw materials, labour and capital. Capital here, remember, means plant and equipment, factories and offices and tools, and different kinds of machines. Okay. So if we, for example, if we had an increase in the number of people eligible to work, right, an increase in the labour force, that's an increase in the quantity of resources. If we had suddenly made new mineral discoveries, or we stole those minerals from another country, then that would increase the quantity of raw materials available to us. Or if we, for example, invested more of our existing resources in building more machines and offices and factories, then that would increase the quantity of capital. So these are ways in which you can increase the productive capacity of the economy. You can produce more. You can produce more goods and services if you have more resources to utilize. Alternatively, well, it's not really alternatively, also you could improve the quality of the resources that you have. So, for example, you can improve the quality of the labour resources by means of education. It increases the productivity of the labour. That is, a given amount of labour, or a given worker, say, can produce more than they could previously thanks to the education that they've been provided. Or alternatively, technological innovation, which improves the quality of capital, improves the quality of machinery, for example. Technology also includes just knowledge, that is, the way in which you can combine your existing resources in new ways. Anyway, so this can improve the quality of your resources. And finally, you could alter the institutional arrangements in your economy so that with the same resources that have the same quality levels, those resources can produce more goods and services than they previously could. All right, so a simple example of institutional arrangements would be, for example, it might be currently mandatory that everyone gets 2 hours for lunch. All workers get 2 hours for lunch. That's the law. Well, you could change the law so that everyone only got half an hour for lunch. Right, so there you go. There's 1.5 hours extra work being done due to a change in an institutional arrangement. That is that for the questionnaires.